Okay, so first things first, this is the attendance passwords for today. Okay, yeah. So if you are if you are taking this class physically in the classroom, this thing is actually a zero, so it's MBI 0 for Q. Okay, so let's take a moment. Take a moment to take attendance, and then we will proceed. Did it work? Okay, good. Okay, I'll give everybody another 30 seconds and then we will proceed. Okay, actually, while I'm giving you 30 seconds, okay, so I posted next Tuesday is your writing assignment 2. I posted the questions for writing assignment 2 on the course model page. Please, if you haven't already done so, please take the next few days to prepare the response to those questions, and then we'll come in here on Tuesday, either physically or online, and you will, like the last time, you will do the questions and then you will turn them into me. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you go. So that's that. Okay, so I'm going to assume that we all have, you all have been successful in taking attendance. I'm going to close this. Okay, so we are going to continue. We're going to continue talking about about the self today. More particularly, we are going to talk about Hume's view of the self. We started talking about Hume on Tuesday. So as you might remember, Hume basically believes that there is. To make a long story short, he basically believes that there is no self. So the example we used of Tuesday was, was the memory I have of being at Mocha Madness in the morning. So on Tuesday morning, I remember being at Mocha Madness, and that's the coffee shop a few blocks from here. Okay, so I hope you can hear me. Okay, so I was at Mocha Madness on Tuesday morning, and I have this, I have a memory of seeing and feeling a whole bunch of things while I was at Mocha Madness. Right, there were all these things that I was seeing and feeling and thinking while I was there. So this whole thing, this whole bundle of things that I'm seeing and thinking and feeling, Hume calls this a bundle of perceptions. Okay, and then here's the thing, right? I was telling you on Tuesday that I don't remember. I don't remember walking from Mocha Madness to campus. I only remember being on campus, at a certain point. So this is the memory I have of me being at ISU. And again, this is another bundle of perceptions. And this consists of seeing and feeling a whole bunch of things that I'm seeing and feeling and thinking. Okay. So Hume's question is, so most of us would think that, look, it's not a problem, right? It's not a problem if I can't remember what happened between Mocha Madness and arriving at ISU. If I can't, it's not a problem it's not a problem if I can't remember the walk from Mocha Madness to ISU. Most people would say, I just happen to have a lapse of memory here. Most people would say, look, the me that was at Mocha Madness is the same as the me that arrived at ISU. But Hume would say, how can you be so sure? I mean, if you cannot remember if you cannot remember the period of time between your being at Mocha Madness and your being at ISU, and you only remember these two separate times, how can you be sure? How can you be sure that you didn't just pop out? You didn't just pop out of existence between Mocha Madness and ISU. Maybe it's possible, right? It's possible that perhaps you are living in a matrix, and this is like a crazy version of the matrix where you pop in and out of the existence. It's possible that, perhaps that I existed here at Local Madness, and then I popped out of existence, and then when I came to ISU again, I popped back into existence. And then it gets even better. It gets even better because if I can pop out of existence between Local Madness and ISU, how can I be sure? How can I be sure that the I who popped back into existence here at ISU, how can I be sure that this I, this me, is the same me as this me that is here? Right? Again, if you imagine that this is the matrix, it could be that maybe whoever's running the matrix could have decided to swap in a new me at this point. And I mean, I know you can say, look, but this new me has memories of this old me. Yeah, maybe, but the possibility still remains that this me that popped into existence here is actually a new me. So basically, what Hume is saying is that if you cannot be sure. If I cannot be sure that this me here is the same as this me here, then how can I be sure that I don't exist for more than a couple of seconds at a time, right? And then it could be that once I get to ISU, from one moment to the next, I'm having thoughts and all that. But the thing is that, I never have the same thoughts and feelings from one moment to the next, right? I'm having different feelings and thinking different thoughts from one moment to the next. So you could, at ISU, from one moment to the next, I have all these different feelings and different bundles of feeling and thinking. So this is one bundle, and then in the next second, there is yet another bundle. In the next second, there is yet another bundle, and so on and so forth. So nothing seems to stay the same. For every second that goes by, there is a different bundle of perceptions. If there are all these different bundles of perception, how can I be sure? How can I be sure that the me who is here is the same as the me that is here, or that the me that is here is the same as the me that is here? So if we cannot be sure that me exists for more than a second, then then how can there be a self? So this is how Hume would put it. On the Moodle site, I came up with I posted a kind of a formal representation of Hume's argument, and here's how he would think about it. If you look into, if we observe the mind, we'll see that at any moment something is being felt or perceived. Right? There is pain. You feel at any moment you might feel pain or pleasure or love or hatred or cold, etc. But each of these things is temporary. One moment you feel love, one moment love is felt, and another moment hatred is felt. So if there is a self, what that seems to mean is that if there is a self, we talk about self all the time. So if there is a self, the self must be something that is permanent and not temporary, right? Like Locke was saying, I'm the same self as the self that went to Hawaii last month. So the self, whatever it is, it has to be something that's permanent and not temporary. But look, Hume would say, look, the things that we feel, the things that are felt are all temporary, right? Love, hatred, pain, pleasure. So if from one moment to the next, just observe your own mind, right? Think about this, just think about this. So if from one moment to the next, all that's going through the mind are things that are just, temporary, right? One moment you feel hate, the next moment you feel love, and the next moment you feel pain, pleasure, whatever. If all of the things that are being felt that goes through the mind are all temporary, and self is supposed to be something that is permanent, So if you look into the mind, you will see, if you look into the mind, you will see that everything is temporary. All the feelings that are in there, all the thoughts that are in there are temporary. So if everything is temporary, and the self is supposed to be something that's permanent, then Hume's conclusion is that there cannot be a self, because the self is supposed to be something permanent, and yet if you look into the mind, nothing is permanent, everything is temporary. So Hume's conclusion is that, therefore, all we have is just a bunch of perceptions and feelings that are just, that are just existing for only a moment, and then they are replaced by another bunch of perceptions, and so on and so forth. There is no self. There is no self because we can't see any self. All we see are these temporary, momentary perceptions and feelings. So the mind is like a movie theater. It's like an old school movie theater with a it's like an old school movie theater with a reel of film. And when the film is being played, it looks like there is one continuous movie going on. But then, but if you actually look at the film itself, the film consists of all these different separate frames. So the film consists of different separate frames. So in the same way, what we think of as the self is really all these different separate frames, these different separate bundles of perception. There is no self that unites all these things. Therefore, there is no self. Pregnant.
So what are we really defining self as to say that it doesn't exist? So I'm not confused on saying there's no self, but what is self?
Okay. So self, Hume. I think both Locke and Hume. Locke and Hume define self as this permanent persisting thing. And so, okay, I know this is not a complete definition because you can always ask what kind of thing. But whatever this thing is, self is something that is permanent and persisting. Uh, but then if you look in the mind, you will see that nothing is permanent and persisting. It is like a movie that is composed of all these different frames, each of which lasts for only a second. So if you don't find anything permanent, then how can there be a self? Jacob.
This is going a bit scientific, but aren't the genetics we have permanent that define what we think and what personality we have? And on to the same point, there might be things we forget, but those things are usually what we consider non-important. What we consider important are usually feelings. Those temporal things that go away don't really go away because our mind catalogs those memories of good feelings and bad feelings.
Yeah, interesting. So the genetics. Let's think about the genetics thing first. Yeah. So if I don't know. So if Hume were to be transported to this day and age, and you were to present him with all these genetic findings and evidence, would you be able to change his mind? I mean, okay, maybe. I mean, we are really used to the idea that there has to be a mind because there is there is the genetics, you can think of we think of the genetics as the hardware, right? That is running the software, which is the mind. But I don't know. I mean, would so if there is a hardware that is running the software and causing the brain to have all these continuous chemical reactions and all these things from one moment to the next, it still doesn't change it still doesn't change the fact that that the feelings and thoughts that are being produced by these chemical reactions are changing from one moment to the next. So Hume would say, look, even if you have the hardware, even if the hardware is present, it still doesn't change the fact that the software that is being produced by the hardware still consists of these momentary bundles of perception. I'm only just arguing on behalf of Hume right now. I'm not saying that he has the final word. So, what do you think? I don't remember your name. What is your name?
Trinity.
Trinity?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just confused why they define self as permanent. Like, why not like until you die or something? Like, I feel like he can only argue that it doesn't exist because he defines it that way.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of cheap trick. You define something that way, and then you say, the thing doesn't exist because it's defined that way, and it doesn't fit that. But if it doesn't fit the definition, but okay, but it's not just a cheap trick. Because okay, so suppose he says to you, look, by permanent, I mean, sure, I don't mean permanent as in forever. I mean permanent as in, for this lifetime, right? If you have a self, it's got to be something that persists throughout your biological life. And then he's back to the same argument. He will say, look, if we look into the mind, all you see are these feelings and thoughts that change from one moment to the next. There is nothing that stays the same throughout your life. So if there is nothing that stays the same throughout the life, throughout the biological life of the body, then all we can say is that there are a bunch of there are a bunch of reactions in the brain that lead to certain feelings and thoughts and all that from one moment to the next. Where is the self?
I was about to say, if there is no self, then how can we correct a mistake? Because if there are different selves and everything's reactionary, you would make the same mistake twice over and over again. But that doesn't happen with us. If we make a mistake, we can think next time we will correct it. So there has to be a self that combined all those memories and those perceptions to be able not to make the mistake again.
Yeah. That is an interesting point. Well, okay, so that is, I mean, if in Hume, I don't know how stubborn Hume is as a philosopher, but if he's being really, really stubborn, he could try saying to you, look, you may, right now you may have corrected certain mistakes that that you remember making in the past, and you think that you that the you that's correcting those mistakes is the same you as the one that made those mistakes in the past, but can we really be sure that that's what's going on? I mean, it could be, right? It's possible that the you that's correcting the mistakes is a different you from the one who made the mistakes in the past. It's just that, again, going back to the idea of the matrix, it's just that whoever is running the matrix may be doing a really good job of of creating a you right now that is able to somehow recollect everything that the previous you did in the past. So it might look like you are correcting the mistakes that the same you did in the past, when actually you are correcting the mistakes of you're actually correcting the mistakes of of a different you. The only way I think, I don't know, I mean, the thing is that the only way to to refute Hume would be to kind of try to, because what happens is that if you try to kind of make a reference across time, right? If you try to make a comparison between the you of right now and the you of the past, Hume can always resort to the strategy of saying, how can you be sure that the you of right now is the same as the you of the past? The only way to get around this is to find a way to actually find a way to actually say that there has to be a self, because if there isn't a self, you wouldn't even be able to exist for even a moment. You wouldn't be able to even have experience for even a moment. So if there is no self, maybe even this wouldn't be possible. Even one of these wouldn't be possible. How do you do that?
A bit off topic, but this sounds a lot like last Thursdayism, which is the idea that everything was created last Thursday. Your memories, your actions, your personality was created last Thursday.
Yeah.
Everything was made to look at the way it was last Thursday.
Or even yesterday. Yeah. Yeah, and that's basically Hume at his most extreme, right? Because if you can, I mean, if you can acknowledge that it is possible that everything in the universe was created last Thursday, that the universe itself actually was created last Thursday. If you can acknowledge that this is possible, then why not bring it even closer? Why not acknowledge? If you can acknowledge that, then there is no problem. There is no reason why you shouldn't acknowledge that it's possible that the entire universe was created yesterday. And if you can acknowledge even that, why not go even further and say that it's possible that the universe was created 5 seconds ago? And it basically is like this weird. It's like this weird. I was going to say look, but that's not the right word. It's like this weird thing that keeps getting destroyed and regenerated every 2 or 3 or 5 seconds. I mean, you might be thinking, who would go to that kind of trouble? Who would go to that kind of trouble to destroy an entire universe and then recreate it in 2 or 3 seconds? But that's not quite the, how do I say this? That's not quite the question. The question is not who would go to that trouble. The question is it possible? And it feels like, if you are going with Hume, if you are going with just considering things as a possibility, then it is at least possible that the universe is created and destroyed anew, and created and recreated afresh every 2 or 3 seconds. So it's just that whoever is doing this is doing such a good job, that I don't feel any break. I don't feel any break in the continuity between now and 2 seconds ago. It feels like it's the same universe, but from behind the scenes, they're actually destroying the universe and creating again. Just like the film example, right? If you're running the film through the projector, it feels seamless, right? It feels like one seamless movie, but the guy who's in the projecting room knows that it's actually a bunch of separate frames. So the only, I mean, I think maybe the only way to refute Hume is to try to beat him at his own game, so to speak. And what I mean is, maybe say to Hume, okay, fine, it's possible that the universe was created and is being destroyed and recreated every 2 or 3 seconds. Even if that is true, uh, if there is no, if there is no, I was going to say there is no self, but if there is no, if there has even, okay, let me try this again. It is possible that the universe is being destroyed and recreated every 2 or 3 seconds. Even if that is true, there still has to be something more. There still has to be something more than just these temporary perceptions in order for even the experience of one moment to be possible. So how do you carry out? How do you do that? I mean, how do you beat? How can we beat Hume at his own game?
Going back to science, there's something known as muscle memory. So if everything's being destroyed every 3 seconds, how can the neurons do something over and over to create your reflexes, your muscle memory? It takes babies like a few weeks to get that muscle memory or reflexes to walk or crawl. So if you're creating that, you can't really create like force neutrons to do that many things in like 3 seconds, or else it would fry the brain.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that is it's not really a problem for Hume, because Hume could say, well, yeah. I mean, our knowledge of physics tells you that that is not possible because you fry the brain. But if you can recreate, if you can destroy and recreate the universe every 2 or 3 seconds, you can also invent anew the laws of the physics every 2 or 3 seconds, right? So if you can reinvent anew the laws of physics every 2 or 3 seconds, it's not impossible. It's not impossible for you to do the whole, to destroy and create somebody's memory anew every 2 or 3 seconds, so that again, from the point of view of you, the user, it will appear that you have muscle memory, when in fact it's just a bunch of freshly implanted memories that are destroyed and re-implanted every 2 or 3 seconds. Here's something to think about. Suppose we say to Hume, look, yes, I say, look, Hume, yes, it's possible that that this any one such bundle of perception only lasts for no more than 1 or 2 seconds. But even within these 1 or 2 seconds, notice that, like, okay, when I was at Mocha Madness, right? When I was at Mocha Madness this morning, in that 1 or 2 seconds, in this bundle of perception, in this 1 or 2 seconds, I am, I'm seeing things, right? I'm seeing, let's see, well, okay, imagine a coffee shop, imagine Mocha Madness. In those 1 or 2 seconds, in that little bundle of perception, I'm seeing things. I'm seeing, I'm seeing a coffee table that is located at a certain distance away from the espresso machine. The coffee table is one thing. The espresso machine in the distance is another thing. And I understand, even in the 1 or 2 seconds, I understand the espresso machine to be something that that makes coffee. So, when I smell the coffee, I have this. When I see and smell the coffee, I understand that the coffee comes out of the grounds that are being ground in the. I don't remember what you do. No, sorry. I know very little about coffee, but you get the idea. There is a cause and effect relationship right? Even in those 1 or 2 seconds, I understand that there's a cause and effect relationship between the espresso machine and the coffee, right? So what this shows us is that even if I exist for only 1 or 2 seconds, in that 1 or 2 seconds, a lot of stuff, a lot of conceptual machinery is packed into those 1 or 2 seconds. There is the idea of, the concept of causation is packed in there. There is the concept of oneness, right? There is one espresso machine. There is one coffee table. And what else is going on? Yeah, let's just think that. So there are a bunch of concepts that are packed in that. There's a bunch of concepts that are packed into 1 or 2 seconds. There is the concept of causation, right? The espresso, the coffee is there because of the espresso machine. There is the concept of, unity, oneness. There is one coffee table. There is one espresso machine. So this is what somebody could say to Hume. Somebody could say, look, even in this one moment, there are all these concepts in there, right? There is causation, there is unity. Something is understanding. Something is understanding that there is an espresso machine that's causing the coffee to be made. Something is understanding that there is one coffee table and not two. Isn't it amazing, actually, when you look at something like a table, right? This is not just a black blob of, stuff. You recognize it as a table. You recognize it instantly as something you sit on. Put things on. So there is all this conceptual, what I'm trying to say is that the mind isn't just this passive thing that just takes in, takes in stuff, sense perceptions from the environment. Because if you were just this passive thing that takes in stuff from the environment, then this thing would just be a blob. If it's just a passive thing, I wouldn't be able to understand that the coffee is there because of the espresso machine. So what I'm trying to say, I know this is really long-winded, but what I'm trying to say is that even in one moment, there is a lot of organizing going on, right? The mind organizes this thing as a table, rather than just a black blob. The mind organizes the coffee as being related to the espresso machine, right? So the mind is an active, even in just 1 second, the mind is actively organizing experience. Okay, this is important. Am I making sense so far? Okay, so the mind is something that is actively organizing experience. There is organizing going on. So if there is organizing going on, then there must be an organizer. Okay, so if there is an organizer of experience, to make sense of our experience, even if it's just for 1 second, then maybe the reply to Hume one possible reply to Hume would be that even in a bundle of perception, right, experience is in a bundle of experience, in a bundle of perception, we have all these experiences of the coffee and all that, causation and all that. So in order for experience to be possible, perception has to be organized. Sorry, I hope we can read this way. Right? And if perception is organized, then there is organization going on. And if there is organization going on, then there is an organizer. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that if there is an organizer, then then the self, what we understand to be the self, is the organizer. So we will say so the reply to Hume would be that look, even if I exist for only just 1 second, in order for that in order for that 1 second existence to to make sense to me, there has to be some organizing going on, and the self is whatever it is that's doing that organizing. The self is whatever it is that's organizing experience into concepts like causation and unity. The self is why you can in that 1 second understand that the espresso machine is causing the coffee to be made, and understand that there is one coffee table and not two, that there is one espresso machine and not two. So there are all these concepts going on, and the self is whatever it is that is doing the work of organizing experience into those concepts, according to those concepts.
So what about like decision making, or actually doing things? Just to me, it sounds like it seems like in each of these little bundles, things are happening to you, like you're almost not even doing anything in there, but you're doing something. From what I heard, Hume's argument, it doesn't seem like you're making decisions, or I'm actually picking up the steps. Like things are happening to you. Like I'm just looking at something, or I'm just feeling something.
Yeah. And perhaps the strategy here is to kind of say, look, Hume, if you can accept that even in one moment, the mind is actually actively organizing stuff, organizing things, and not just passively taking information, then is it more likely that from one moment to the next, is it more likely that from one moment to the next, you are just, you're just like you use the example of picking up the coffee cup. Is it more likely that from one moment to the next, the picking up of the coffee cup is just this, thing that is happening to the mind, or is it more likely that in something like picking up the coffee cup, there is also organizing going on? If there is organizing going on in one moment of time, isn't it also likely that there is organizing that goes on between moments of time, from one moment to the next? So you use this idea of organizing to establish that if there is organizing that happens within one single moment of time, then it is also very possible that there is organizing that goes on over many moments of time. So in the case of picking up the coffee cup, there is it's a more complex kind of organizing going on. It's not just a coffee cup that is being picked up, but there is some kind of, the word for this is teleological relationship, purpose-directed relationship. So the coffee cup is being picked up in order that somebody might drink from it. So the thing to say to Hume might be that if we can accept that there are They are as relatively simple concepts like causation and oneness, unity going on in one single moment of time. It looks like we can also accept that there are other more complicated concepts like purpose-directed activity that is happening over a longer period of time, maybe 2 or 3 or 5 seconds. And then from there, you can also, you can also say that if this is possible, if it's possible to have purpose-directed activity that happens over 2 or 3 seconds, then there is quite likely that there is a cell that exists over at least over 2 or 3 seconds that is responsible for, the activity. Because we experience, when there is the experience, there's also the experience of space and time. When you when all these bundles of perception are going on, the bundles of perception are being experienced as happening across time, and again, you could also say to Hume that in order to, just as there is something that has to be organizing experience, if you are going to experience things as being caused by one thing or another, in the same way, it seems very likely that there should also be an organizing of experience going on if things are being experienced as happening across time. Like when you pick up the coffee cup, the picking up of the coffee cup is happening across time, right? 2 or 3 seconds, however long it is. So if it is happening across time, then nobody really knows what time is, but one reasonable theory is that time exists because there is a mind that is experiencing things, that is experiencing and organizing things as happening one after the other, right? The picking up of the coffee cup is seen as happening across time because there is a mind that is organizing that as an action that happens in a sequential order. So one could argue that time is, in order for experience to be possible, you need causation and unity, but more than that, you also need time. So time, causation, unity, time. So all of these are things that concepts, things, whatever. You can think of this as concepts that make experience possible. These are concepts that make experience possible. These are concepts that we use that we use to organize experience. And again, same thing. If experience is being organized, whether according to causation or unity or time, then there has to be an organizer. Therefore, there has to be a self. all of this, by the way, this whatever everything that I was just talking about experience and causation and organizing, all of this actually comes from Kant. So basically, Kant's reply to Hume is this. He says, look, I agree with you that I cannot directly prove the existence of a self. I agree with you that if you look at the mind, all you will see are all these experiences that last only from one, all you will see are all these feelings that last only from one moment to the next. But maybe you are looking at the wrong place. And that's what Kant would say to you. He would say, look, maybe the self isn't really the sort of thing that you can prove by looking at what's going on in your mind. Rather, the self is something that you have to postulate. Yes, it's something that you have to postulate. It's something that you have to it's something that you have to postulate in order to solve the problem of how experience is possible. If your question is how is experience possible, then you have to postulate the self in order to solve that question. Just like in mathematics, right? In mathematics, you have to postulate all kinds of things in order to solve certain problems. Like you have to postulate imaginary numbers in order to solve certain problems, right? So you can think of the self as being that way. It is something you have to postulate. You cannot directly prove its existence. You cannot touch it or whatever or see it. But you have to postulate its existence in order to solve the question, in order to solve the problem of how is experience possible. That's a very cool answer. Because what Kant has done basically is to kind of change the topic in a creative way. He says, look, I mean, you are asking the wrong question. You are looking in the wrong place. If you are asking for, if you're asking for how do you prove the existence of the self, you can't touch it or see it. How do you prove it? If you're asking that question, you are kind of looking in the wrong place. You're asking the wrong question. The more meaningful question to be asking is, given that there is human experience, you should be asking how is experience possible? And then once you ask that question, then the answer would be, well, experience is possible because there is something that is doing some kind of organizing behind the scenes. And that something that is doing the organizing behind the scenes is the self. By the way, I know this. I don't know how interested you would be in this point, but in a way, in a nutshell, that is kind of the difference between British philosophy and German philosophy. Both Locke and Hume were British, and I don't know if it's still true today. Things are probably a bit more complicated. But in the 18th and 19th centuries, probably the 17th century as well. In the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, the British philosophy was basically known for having this kind of empiricist mindset, right? Hume is an empiricist because he bases everything on sense data, on things that can be known by the senses. So basically, so he basically comes right out and says, whatever it is that cannot be experienced by the senses cannot be shown to exist. So the self cannot be experienced by the senses, therefore the self does not exist. But German philosophy, takes a different approach. Now, German philosophy doesn't really rely so much on the senses. It basically asks these kinds of questions like, how is X possible? So in this case, the question is, how is experience possible? And once you ask that question, once you ask how is experience possible, then the task the task for philosophy is to find out what it is that makes that thing possible. What is the, the ground, so to speak? What is the ground of that thing? Yeah, so Greek philosophy is concerned with sense, and German philosophy is concerned with ground. Or how is stuff possible? Sometimes people have referred to German philosophy as transcendental philosophy, which sounds very fancy, which is a fancy term, but it's really a fancy term for this kind of grounding approach towards philosophy. Instead of asking how do you prove this or that, you ask how is this possible? Okay, let's see. Let me take a picture of this first. Okay, interesting, very good. Any thoughts so far? Comments, questions? Well, this is not what I'm about to say. What I'm about to say, it's not really about this question of the self necessarily. It's more about the mind, really. I feel that we can kind of I can go on a little bit of a digression, but hopefully it's a useful digression, interesting digression. Now that I've covered all of these things that need to be covered, I can probably go on a little bit of a digression. So here's what's going on. So earlier on, at the beginning of class, close to the beginning of class, Jacob brought up this idea that that we can think of the mind or the self or whatever you want to call it as being like a we have a body, right? There is a body. And the body is made up of a whole bunch of things, but there is a brain, and then on the cellular level there is the genetic sequence, DNA, and all that. The idea seems to be that the genetic sequence, what your genetics are, has kind of predisposes your brain to be a certain way. It doesn't determine. I don't think it determines your brain to be one way rather than another, but it does have some effect in making your brain one way rather than another. Okay, and then the brain, right? In the brain, at every given moment, at any given moment, there are a bunch of reactions, chemical reactions. Okay, and then because of these chemical reactions that are going on every moment, you have thoughts. There are all these thoughts, feelings, sensations that go on from one moment to the next. And we think of all these thoughts and feelings and sensations as, as more or less the mind. Okay, so if you look at it that way, then the mind, the thoughts and feelings and sensations that go on from one moment to the next. Okay, now we're not talking about Hume anymore. So I'm not questioning whether there is a self. So let's just say there's a self. Okay, we're kind of changing the topic a little bit. So there is so all these, we assume that all these thoughts and feelings and sensations that go on from one moment to the next make up your personality over time and yourself. Okay, very good. So if you look at it that way, then all of these thoughts and feelings and sensations, they emerge, right? They emerge from all these brain, chemical reactions, right? Okay. Well, here's one question. So we know that the brain that we have and the chemical reactions that are going on in them, they give rise, they cause a bunch of emotions, feelings, and thoughts to emerge, and they cause the mind they cause the mind to emerge from them. So think of this as the hardware again, and think of the mind that emerges as the software. Okay. Now, I guess my question is this kind of hardware the only kind of hardware from which a mind can emerge? Okay, what do I mean? So one of the wonderful things that a mind can do is play chess, right? For many centuries, people believe that a computer can never play chess as well as a human being. I don't want to bore you with the history, but you can go read it up somewhere. So people basically believe that being able to play chess well is like a distinguishing mark of human intelligence, or that. Okay, but then in 1997, this a bunch of scientists in MIT, at MIT built this chess computer called Deep Blue, and the Gary Kasparov, who was the world champion at the time, beat Deep Blue, and the rest is history. Right now, the chess software that I have in my computer can beat any human being. So I guess my question is, if you look at a computer like Deep Blue, right? If you look at this hardware, in this case, the hardware is the computer, has a mind. I guess my question is, has a chess playing mind emerged from Deep Blue? Has a chess playing mind emerged from Deep Blue, or is Deep Blue just is it just a machine that is capable of crunching 50 million possibilities in 1 second? Maybe another way of asking the same question is Deep Blue playing chess when Gary Kasparov lost, or is Deep Blue just crunching a bunch of is it just crunching 50 million possibilities a second?
Wouldn't it just be crunching the numbers? Because I don't think that a computer system would necessarily have a mind because of the fact that it's not really experiencing the feelings and sensations that you describe a mind as experiencing. And I suppose you could argue that it could have thoughts because, it's carrying out all these processes, but in a sense, humans gave the computer those thoughts, based on the code. So it only has a set number of thoughts that are already pre-programmed.
So I don't think that it necessarily would have a mind, but it could technically have a brain because it has those physical aspects that allow it to, you know, play chess like that.
So it's interesting. You said that even though it has thoughts, as in like it has thoughts because it's crunching through all these possibilities in a second and making good chess moves. It has thoughts, but it doesn't have a mind. Bracken?
Just kind of say on that, I just think that the computers have a mind because it's not, it's just doing, it's not really experience.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely doing because it's crunching possibilities and beating people at chess. Yeah, but is it experiencing?
My thing is that no matter what game, the computer will always play the same, as in difficulty wise. It will always do the same things depending on the move. It will always do the same thing. It's not reacting to anything. It's just doing what is programmed as the best move. While humans will always, the difference between that is humans will always vary in their moves. They will sometimes do worse. They will sometimes do better. A computer will always stay stagnant.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you about this. Maybe 2 years ago. What happened is that so when Deep Blue, right? When Deep Blue beat Kasparov, people kind of said the same thing as you said, right? That okay, so it can crunch 50 million possibilities a second, but it's still an algorithm, right? If I don't know, if pawn to e4, then pawn to e5 or whatever, right? So it's still basically a very mechanistic thing. But what happens is that what happened was that in the last 2 years, there is this new kind of computer. It's called AlphaZero, and what AlphaZero can do is it basically taught itself to play chess, and some other games as well. So what happens is that it kind of is actually is this thing that can evolve in real time. I've never actually played AlphaZero before because I think it's kind of futile. But what happens is that you can set AlphaZero to start from stage 0. So when you play AlphaZero and chess at stage 0, it's really kind of pathetic. It barely even knows how the pieces move. But then if you keep playing with it, it will actually start learning on its own. It will start, it will start learning and developing strategies and tactics. And by, I think within maybe, I don't remember how many games, but within a certain number of games, it would actually, it would have gotten to grandmaster level, and you will feel like if you are a player, you will feel like you are playing a human being who is learning really, really, really quickly. And so I think so. The idea is that with machine learning, right? With machine learning, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you have if machines can actually learn stuff from scratch, again, it's easy to dismiss a machine as not having a mind. If all it does is you just program if X then Y into it. But if it can actually learn stuff on its own and get to a super high level of proficiency, I don't know. I mean, if learning is what if learning is one of the hallmarks of a human mind, of having a mind, I mean, wouldn't that suggest that it is possible to? Okay, let me say this really slowly. If it's possible to, if learning is one of the things that makes humans different from non-humans, if learning is one of the things that make us have a mind, then if you can create something that can learn and learn really well, wouldn't that be a mind? Let's ask the people in Zoom. Okay, what do you guys in Zoom think? If a machine can learn from scratch something like chess and yeah, if you can teach yourself chess from scratch and teach yourself really well, and if part of being human is that we can teach ourselves stuff and teach ourselves well, doesn't that make the machine a mind? Oh. Hey, did you hear my question?
I suppose in a sense, if there's no sort of gauge of sentience, it's still technically a mind, if it can think, but
Yeah.
depending on the
Well, I think the question we are kind of going towards is what is thinking, right? So, we said that, well, okay, Deep Blue wasn't really thinking because all we did was give it a bunch of very specific and very sophisticated instructions. Okay. But if you have something that can not only follow instructions, but that can actually teach itself and learn stuff, does that now, I mean, if you have something that can learn and teach itself stuff, wouldn't that count as thinking?
I mean, I suppose so. It's primary directive at that point. I mean, there's lesser life forms that only, go by instinct. And if they don't have to, I don't know, because bad example, but there's fish that would continually be trapped by other fish just due to predatory concerns, like an anglerfish. They don't learn based on what other fish do. It's still instinct wise. So you'd have to base thinking is learning and adapting, but I don't particularly know.
Yeah, well, I don't particularly know either, to be honest with you. It's just that, if you can teach, how do I say this? If you have a machine, right, that can not just teach yourself how to play a game, but teach yourself to play the game really, really well, so as to be able to beat even the top players at the game. I don't know, Jacob.
So this goes way back where I said, by sheer possibility, if you keep doing things random, eventually you'll get it right. Well, if that's what's the machine doing, it acts stupid. And then once it finds something right, it keeps doing that right. And then it keeps doing stuff random. Eventually it'll get the right way.
Try and error, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that make it have a mind, or is it just doing stuff random with no thinking?
I don't know. I mean, humans. I mean, we learn a lot of stuff by try and error too, right? So, and I'm happy to say that somebody has a mind if he is able to pick up stuff by try and error. So it feels like if we can say that we humans have mind because they can learn by try and error, feels that we should also say that machines have minds if they can learn by try and error. Bracken?
The stuff is not really fully developed in my head yet, but I think that yes, like that hearing like AI and stuff is actual thinking, and I would say it isn't mind, but the only reason we have kind of some doubts about it is because that's thinking with numbers instead of like ideas like we do, and that just is hard for us to say, oh yeah, it's a mind like us, but because it's two different ways of thinking, but it's still the same thinking and mind, like it's two different versions of the same thing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. There are, how do I say this? The AI is actualizing the same result in a different way from us, right? We actualize the same result by whatever it is that we do. The AI actualizes the same result by crunching ones and zeros. So now I'm wondering, right? In the early days of computing, it was easy for people to just dismiss computers as just not being very clever, not being very smart, because all they do is crunch ones and zeros. But now the question is, maybe if you get really, really, really good at crunching ones and zeros, you will get to a point where you can have a mind. because you will get to the point where you can actually teach yourself stuff and become really good at it. And then now there is facial recognition software, right? So imagine if you can pair pair AlphaZero with a facial recognition software, and now AlphaZero will be able to go out into the world and recognize faces, and I feel that at some point it's possible at some point that if you can get AlphaZero if you can teach AlphaZero the same things about faces and emotions that you can teach it about chess, then AlphaZero will be able to recognize faces and detect people's emotions by looking at people's faces and do all kinds of things that humans can do today. Like maybe, I don't know, I mean, maybe AlphaZero would be, maybe you can have a robot that is running on AlphaZero with the proper facial recognition software, and then it can become a server in the restaurant because it can then look at your face and read your emotions and detect whether you are happy with your food or the service or whatnot. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting new world. I mean, and then if you can go from that, you can maybe one day AlphaZero, there's a company that will be able to make robots that can recognize, read faces, detect people's emotions, and then at the same time you can also program it with some kind of software for learning interesting conversation topics. And then and then there'll be there'll be this company that'll be renting out robots for conversation partners for people who are bored or lonely. I just thought of something scary. Maybe one day they won't need humans to teach philosophy anymore. Right? They'll just put a robot out here, and then the robot, will be able to detect your emotions and not just answer your questions, but also maybe say interesting things if it senses that you're getting bored or stuff like that. Well, very exciting world that we live in. Okay. So here's the plan. Maybe I should wrap this up. I should wrap up the class. So here's the plan. Tuesday is the English writing assignment. Thursday we'll move on to free will. Yeah, it's a lot to cover in free will, but I'll try my best to cover as much as possible on Thursday. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so unless there are further questions, okay, I think let's call it a day. Thank you very much for your long time.